Have you ever, looked at an aerial photo or maybe Google Earth and suddenly seen something weird? Something huge, ancient, that just doesn't make sense from ground level. Now, what if that thing was deliberately carved into the Earth ages ago by people who, well, definitely didn't have planes? That's the Nazca Lines for you. Utterly baffling. Welcome to the Deep Dive. You know the drill, we grab a bunch of interesting sources, dig in, and see what shakes out. Today, it's one of archaeology's great head-scratchers, the enigmatic Nazca Lines of Peru. We're working from a really comprehensive article that maps out these incredible geoglyphs, I guess is the term. So our mission basically is to figure out what these lines actually are, who made them, what they drew, which is pretty wild stuff, how they've lasted so long, and the big one, why. Why go to all that trouble? Consider this your shortcut to getting your head around one of the world's most fascinating ancient puzzles. Okay, let's dive in. Imagine you're flying way up over this super dry desert in southern Peru. Reddish-brown earth everywhere, and then, bam! These giant pictures start appearing below you. A hummingbird, a monkey, massive triangles. That's them, the Nazca Lines. So just to be clear, we're talking about ancient geoglyphs, huge designs scraped to the desert floor. They covered, about 450 square kilometers. It's easily one of the most famous and, yeah, definitely most mysterious archaeological sites anywhere.
And pinning down who exactly made them and when is pretty interesting. The main creators were the Nazca people. They were active in that area roughly between 200 BCE and 500 CE. They were a pre-Incan culture, quite sophisticated, actually known for amazing pottery textiles. But it's also possible that earlier Paracas culture might have started some of the lines. They had similar earthwork traditions nearby, so maybe the Nazca just took an existing idea and, well, ran with it on a massive scale.
Right, so a culture that definitely didn't have airplanes or drones.
Yeah.
Which brings me to the part I just can't wrap my head around. The how. How did they possibly make these huge, precise shapes? It seems almost impossible.
It does seem that way, but their method was surprisingly straightforward, though it required immense effort and planning. No giant earth movers, obviously. They basically just cleared away the dark, reddish-brown pebbles that cover the desert surface. These pebbles are coated in iron oxide. Remove those, and you expose the much lighter, yellowish-gray soil underneath. That contrast is what makes the lines visible. Simple, but effective.
Simple concept, maybe, but the execution over those distances.
Exactly. For the precision and scale, the thinking is they used pretty basic tools. Wooden stakes, long cords or ropes, maybe plotting things out using grids. They likely made small models first, sort of like blueprints, and then scaled them up using careful measurements, reference points. Maybe using those stakes and ropes to draw perfect circles or keep lines dead straight over kilometers. Some researchers even think they used the surrounding hills as, natural viewing platforms to direct the work from above, in a way.
Wow. Okay, that level of planning is incredible.
Yeah.
But it leads straight back to that really weird detail. You can only properly see these things, appreciate the whole figure, from way up high. You're standing right next to one, it probably just looks like a shallow ditch, right?
Pretty much. Or just a path. You lose the overall shape completely.
So this isn't just some random fact. It's central to the whole mystery, isn't it? It makes you seriously question who they were doing it for.
Absolutely. It's perhaps the most fundamental question. If the people making them couldn't see the finished product properly from the ground, who was the intended audience? Was it symbolic? Were parts of the lines, the paths themselves, used for rituals on the ground, even if the full image wasn't visible? That's one idea. Or, and this is where it gets really speculative, were they meant for someone or something else? Gods in the sky. Beings looking down. It really forces you to consider perspectives beyond the everyday human one.
Okay, so let's talk about what they actually drew on this giant desert canvas. You mentioned different types.
Yeah, there's a surprising variety, which might suggest different functions, too.
Yeah.
Broadly, you can group them into three main categories. First, you've got hundreds, over 800 actually, of just dead straight lines. And some of these are long, stretching for kilometers, going straight over hills, ignoring the landscape. Just perfectly straight lines.
Kilometers, wow.
Yeah, really makes you wonder. Were they pathways, sight lines, something else entirely? Then you have geometric shapes, big ones. Spirals, triangles, rectangles, and especially these large trapezoids. Some are massive.
What do people think those were for?
Well, maybe enclosed spaces for ceremonies, or perhaps abstract symbols. Some think the trapezoids might relate to water management or point towards water sources, which were crucial there.
Okay, and the third type? The famous ones.
Right, the figurative designs, sometimes called biomorphs. These are the animals and plants. There are about 70 known ones. And yeah, these include the ones everyone recognizes. The hummingbird, the spider, the monkey with that curly tail. A lizard, a huge condor, a fish, even what looks like a spaceman, though that's probably misinterpretation.
And these drawings are not small, right? We're talking huge.
Oh, absolutely massive. Sizes vary a lot, but some, like the lizard or condor, can be hundreds of meters long. I think one figure reaches about 370 meters, which is, nearly 1,200 feet?
That's insane. Trying to draw something that big, keeping the proportions right without being able to step back and see it. The level of skill and coordination is just staggering.
It truly is. Which brings us right back to that core mystery. Why? Why create these monumental, intricate designs that are best viewed from an impossible perspective for the creators? Honestly, there's no single universally accepted answer. That's why it's still debated so fiercely. But researchers have come up with several pretty compelling theories, usually based on what we know about Indian cultures and the environment.
Okay, let's get into those theories. What's the thinking? I know the idea of a giant calendar comes up a lot. Maria Reicha, right? How solid did that theory look these days?
Yes, the astronomical calendar idea is probably the most famous, largely thanks to Maria Reka. She was a German mathematician who dedicated, decades of her life to studying and preserving the lines. A real hero of Nazca. Her theory was that many lines, and maybe some figures, align with important celestial events, the sun at the solstices or equinoxes, the rising points of certain stars like the Pleiades, which were super important for agriculture.
So like a giant farmer's almanac etched in the desert.
Kind of, yeah. It suggests the Nazca had a really sophisticated understanding of astronomy, which makes sense for timing planting and harvests and for religious cycles. But while some alignments seem pretty clear, later research using computers and statistical analysis has questioned whether all the lines fit a precise astronomical pattern. It's likely some lines did have astronomical significance, but it might not be the sole explanation for everything. Maybe one function among several.
Right, not the whole story, perhaps. So, if not just stars, what about the gods? It feels like something this immense has to have a spiritual angle. What do scholars think about religious or ceremonial uses?
That's probably the most widely supported category of theories, honestly. Religion was central to everything for these cultures. Many scholars are convinced the lines were deeply tied to religious rituals. The animal figures, for instance, the hummingbird, spider, monkey, these creatures often held powerful symbolic meanings in Andean cosmology. They could represent deities, spirits, concepts like fertility or water. So the drawings might be giant offerings or images to invoke those powers.
Like prayers drawn on the earth.
Exactly. And the straight lines, maybe they were sacred pathways, processional routes. Imagine groups walking these lines during specific ceremonies, connecting different sacred spots, or maybe acting out myths across the landscape. The act of walking the line itself being the ritual.
Okay, that makes sense. And connected to that, there's the idea of them being offerings specifically meant to be seen by the gods, right?
Yes. That builds directly on the visibility issue we talked about. If the gods are in the heavens, maybe you make offerings big enough for them to see. It implies this direct communication, or attempt at communication, between the people on the ground and the divine powers above. A very literal way of getting the gods' attention, perhaps.
And given where they lived, that incredibly dry desert, there's another theory that feels very practical, very grounded in survival. The water connection.
Absolutely. That's a very compelling one. The Nazca Desert is brutally arid. Water was everything, life, food, existence. So some researchers argue strongly that the lines are connected to water rituals. Maybe the figures were pleas for rain. The spider, for instance, is sometimes linked to rain prediction in local traditions. Or maybe the geometric shapes, so those big trapezoids, somehow marked or led to underground water sources, like the Puquios, these amazing underground aqueducts the Nazca also built.
Ah, the Puquios.
Yeah. So the lines could be part of a whole system, a sort of ritual landscape focused on finding, managing, and worshiping water. A desperate, maybe, but highly organized way to deal with their harsh environment.
It's just incredible. The sheer ingenuity is amazing.
Yeah.
But, okay, shift gears slightly. These things are ancient, like 1,500 to 2,000 years old. How are they still here? Why haven't they just eroded away?
Yeah, their preservation is almost as remarkable as their creation. It comes down to a really unique combination of factors in that specific desert environment. First, as we've said, it's unbelievably dry. Almost no rain. Rain is a huge factor in erosion, washing things away, but here there's hardly any. So water erosion is minimal.
Okay, dryness helps. What else?
Second, it's surprisingly windless, especially right at the ground level. You don't get strong, scouring winds constantly blowing the sand and pebbles around to erase the lines. It's relatively stable.
Less wind, less erosion. Makes sense.
And third, there's the surface itself. Those dark pebbles, the desert varnish, form a kind of protective pavement. When the Nazca removed them, the lighter soil underneath was exposed. That exposed soil, with the intense sun and maybe the little bit of morning dew, seems to have hardened fairly quickly, forming a kind of crust. This, plus the lack of rain and strong wind, essentially locked the designs in place.
Wow. So it's like the perfect storm of preservation conditions, just the right climate, the right surface.
Exactly. It's this incredible combination of geology and climate that allowed these relatively shallow etchings to survive for millennia.
Which is why they're so important and why UNESCO designated the area a World Heritage Site back in 1994, right? Recognizing their unique value.
Precisely. They're seen as an unparalleled testimony to the culture, technology, and beliefs of a pre-Columbian society, a window into a world that's otherwise largely vanished.
So wrapping this up, we've covered a lot. Who made the Nazca Lines, how they likely did it, which is just mind-blowing engineering, the incredible things they depicted, animals, shapes, lines stretching for miles, and the big questions about why. Was it astronomy, religion, water, offerings to the sky, maybe a mix of all of them, plus the unique luck of the environment that preserved them? It's really an astonishing story.
It really is. And if you think about the bigger picture, the Nazca Lines aren't just old drawings in the sand. They feel like this silent, powerful message sent across centuries. And it leaves you with this profound question, doesn't it? What drives people to create something so enormous, so lasting, but with a purpose that seems, well, maybe not entirely for human eyes? What makes a culture invest so much effort into something aimed, perhaps, at the heavens or at eternity? It kind of makes you wonder, what messages are we leaving behind today? Intentionally or unintentionally? For who or what?
That's a heavy thought. It's definitely a testament to the sheer ingenuity, the spiritual drive, maybe the ambition of the Nazca people, leaving us this giant puzzle in the desert, still making us wonder about the grand statements cultures make and what they really mean long after the creators are gone. Definitely something to chew on long after this deep dive.